So, I enjoy weird and silly challenges in video games, especially challenges such as removing the A button or not being able to go right in Mario. And I thought, what if I applied that logic to Half-Life 2? So, I present to you trying to play Half-Life 2 without the W key. That's right, I will not be able to move forward at all. The first thing I did was unbind the forward motion controls and start the game. A few ground rules before we get started. I decided to not rebind any of the other keys. I'm not going to be using any sort of glitches or cheats to try to get through it. And I decided to set myself the goal of getting to the airboat.
So wake up, Mr. Freeman. Wake up and smell the ashes.
So I found the sort of opening of the game decently easy. Everything up to meeting Barney is just walking backwards or walking sideways. So fairly easy stuff.
That's all I have.
Once you leave Barney's interrogation room, of course, I had to figure out how I would go up the ladder backwards, which is simple. You just walk up to it, connect to it, and then press S to go up. The first problem that I ran into was actually that I kept hitting the Metro Cop with the can, and then he would chase after me and go back to his spot, blocking me from proceeding in the game. Eventually, I was able to get around him. I don't know why my aim was off, but, you know, you gotta hit the Metro Cop. I'm not throwing it in the trash can. So even after I got past him, he did chase me for an impressive amount of time. Once past him, it was a decently easy walk through City 17. We of course passed through the playground, which I actually made a video about, which you should all check out. And then it was into the apartment buildings. Now, once the Combine start chasing you through the apartment buildings, I must say it gets rather confusing. Because up until now, the backwards controls were something that I could just think through. But once you're running from enemies and being attacked, I completely lost all sense of direction and kept getting stuck on all the corners in this apartment building and getting beaten to death by Combine soldiers. Eventually, I was able to make it out of the apartment building and then climb around on the roof. I thought this was going to be much harder than it actually turned out to be. I think I only died once here, so that was good. We can sort of skip through the meeting Alex Vance and going to Dr. Kleiner's lab because that's all pretty basic, even with no forward movement. Now, after a frantic dash through the rail yard, I made it to the underground tunnel where you get the pistol. Shooting is essentially no different even without the W key, but I did often find myself stopping to line up my shots. A little bit further in, I encountered what, for a few minutes, I thought was going to be the end of the run. When you're running through the sewers, you come to this point where you have to wait for some barrels to drop down and explode, opening up another grate. But after they exploded, I just couldn't figure out for a bit how to jump up. It just wasn't really lining up or not working. I'm not really sure why it was so difficult, but I just found myself really struggling to get up there, and I almost considered, oh, maybe this is not possible. But then suddenly it worked, and I was like, yes, this is great. I got through, and on to the next section of the game. Right after that, there was another decently tough bit where you come out into the canal, and you have to run up some wooden ramps and do a few jumps. Of course, this is pretty basic in normal gameplay, but when you're running backwards, it's a little more challenging. I think I got through it in 1 or 2 attempts, Um, it helped that I killed all the enemies pretty quickly, so I was free to focus on the jumping around, though something exploded next to me, weirdly in one part, and I didn't really see. Maybe I just bumped into an exploding barrel or something. I'm not really sure what happened, but I randomly took a lot of damage. The seesaw puzzle is, of course, just as annoying when you're going backwards as it is when you have forward movement, so you'll see me quickly complete this. Usually I would try to skip it, but stacking up the bricks on the wall while not having forward movement just seemed a little bit difficult, so I did the puzzle the traditional way. Thankfully, it didn't take too long. Next up, I encountered the Lambda cache with the jump scare head crab zombie. Now, I really didn't want to go backwards down this little tunnel, so I figured out a weird sort of weaving motion to go down it with the A and D keys. At the end, I did kill the head crab zombie pretty quickly, got all this health, and then as I backed out of the tunnel, the game spawned a Combine soldier right behind me who immediately took away most of the health that I got from going to the Lambda cache. Now, swimming in this game can get a little difficult without the W key. That's because going backwards underwater sends you skyrocketing back to the surface, so when you need to dive down quickly, that can be a problem. I encountered it in this little area with this rotating water turbine or something, and as you have to swim between the blades of the turbine to get into a little tunnel. So it took a couple of tries to get that right, just because your movement is even more limited underwater. One of the next puzzles involves diving down and breaking some wood that's keeping crates locked at the bottom of the water so that you can jump across them to get to the next area. That was just a little bit tedious without the W key, but it was actually much harder to jump across them than it was to get them up there. I don't know why when I released them, two of them were stuck together. I don't think that's normal. Maybe it is, I forget. But two of them were stuck together. So making a bridge was a little bit difficult, especially when you can't move forward. I kept falling in the water, but eventually I did make it across and out into the next area. So after a little bit more climbing and a little bit more sewer exploration, I finally made it to the area where they introduce head crabs and head crab zombies. Now, head crabs, of course, can be easily taken care of with the crowbar, and the head crab zombies are at least slow moving. What was actually throwing me off during this part was just sort of all the turns you have to make to go through the level, and the fact that if you don't stay on the proper path, you will take damage due to the radiation in the water. There's also this part with an electrified shipping container that I kept bumping into instead of going through. I also for a moment was launched up into the air and got a little bit stuck between two parts of the level. Not sure why that happened, but it was kind of funny. So then I made it to the airboat, which I thought was going to be the end of my challenge because I thought it would be impossible to drive the airboat out of its first little area because it requires going forward. But I did manage to get it out of the starting area with a little bit of weaving, and one thing that is nice about the airboat is that you can look backwards while driving it. So I just drove in reverse, looking backwards all the way. While the steering is the opposite of what you would expect, which did lead to some poor airboat driving, I did manage to make it a little bit further. I did decide to stop right here at this next puzzle. But maybe I will continue my no W key journey some other time. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing, and if you want to support the channel, check out our new memberships.